So in the previous chapter, we have learned about what are the parameters. Now, there's one more thing which is called hyperparameters also. The hyperparameters, these are the parameters in machine learning models. Those are set before the learning process begins, and they remain constant throughout the learning process, and they are not learned from the data. So that's the difference in between your parameters and hyperparameters, where in the parameters you continuously tweak the weights and biases to optimize and give a maximum expect the output of the network should be closer to what you are expected output. You are expecting an output. So that's what it is about hyperparameters. There are two types of hyperparameters. One is model hyperparameters, which includes number of neurons, layers, how many layers you wanted to keep, and activation functions, which we have all of this we have already visited. So these are the hyperparameters. We define it way before we start training our model, and those are called model hyperparameters. There are other set of parameters which are training hyperparameters, which helps during the training process. Okay, one of them is learning rate. Learning rate is how much changes you wanted to do to the weights. Okay, so that your output is closer to what is your expected output. So that's what is about learning rate. While the batch is nothing but how many number of training records at a time needs to pass through through the entire network. Okay, that's what is a batch about. While the epoch is how many training cycles you need to perform on the entire training data set. So what happens is it trains during the each batch also, and it you try to train it on the epochs also, and you will see that keeps on your accuracy keeps on growing if you have set all the model hyperparameters properly, um, as well as training hyperparameters, and the network is able to learn from itself. So that's all about hyperparameters. Stay tuned. We will talk in the next chapter.